husband and wife be during their fasts? And what is the level of intimacy uh, a husband and wife can have during the month of Ramadan? Now, intimacy that does not lead to marital relations will not break the fast. So, for example, just by kissing your spouse or by touching your spouse, these things are permitted during the fast. They will not break the fast. However, kissing or touching, if one fears that it may lead to marital relations, will make the fast makruh. So if someone has in their mind that if I kiss my spouse, this might lead to marital relations, then in doing so, the kissing will become makruh. When there is no fear of it leading to marital relations, then merely kissing or touching will not make the fast makruh, and it will be valid to do in doing so for the husband or wife. So remember, kissing or touching merely, this will not invalidate the fast. And the second question we have today: what breaks the fast for a husband and a wife? So what level of intimacy breaks the fast for a husband or a wife? Now, marital relations for the husband and the wife will break the fast. Marital relations for the husband and wife will break the fast. And if they do so deliberately, then both spouses will need to keep the qada, and they will also need to keep kafara. So for marital relations during the fast, qada and kafara will be wajib upon the husband and the wife. And even for the husband, ejaculation through physical stimulation, this will break the fast as well. Okay, but there will be no kafara in this case. The kafara is only when marital relations take place. Just ejaculation through physical stimulation will only necessitate qada. Okay, even deliberately, or even if it happens accidentally due to kissing or touching. That is why if there is fear that the kissing or the touching may lead to such, then it will be makruh to do so. The kissing and touching will only be without any karahat, without any dislike, when there is no fear that it would lead to anything further. Okay, but marital relations for the husband and the wife, this will break the fast, and kafara will be necessary. And for the husband, ejaculation through physical stimulation, whether it happens deliberately or accidentally, then this will also break the fast. And also, keeping in line, swallowing the saliva of one's spouse will also invalidate the fast. Remember, we mentioned in a previous mas'ala that swallowing your own saliva will not break your fast, but swallowing the saliva of your spouse, swallowing your saliva of your partner, this will break and invalidate your fast. In the third question we have for today: what is the ruling if the husband and the wife have marital relations, but it happens without the wife's consent? So the husband and the wife, they have marital relations, but it's happened without the wife's consent, and it's happened during the day. Then the husband will need to keep qada and kafara, but it happens without the wife's consent. Then the wife will only need to keep the wife will only need to keep qada. She will not need to keep kafara. When it does happen with the wife's consent, then both will need to keep qada and kafara. But if it happens without the wife's consent, then the husband will need to keep qada and kafara, and the wife will only need to keep qada. Now, in the next question, what is the ruling of a wet dream? If a man experiences a wet dream, does his fast break? Does he need to keep qada? Will he also need to keep kafara? The answer is that after the Fajr Salah, usually, hopefully, in the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will go to sleep after the Fajr Salah. But if a man experiences a wet dream after the Fajr Salah, then this will not invalidate the fast. Remember, if it happens when he's awake and it's done through physical stimulation, either accidentally or deliberately, then he'll need to keep qada. But when it's a wet dream, when it happens during his sleep, then the fast will not break, the fast will still be valid. He will not need to keep any qada, he will remain in the fast. And also, touching upon those things which do not break the fast, if a person merely looks at his spouse, if a man merely looks at his wife, and just by looking, this leads to ejaculation, and this ejaculation happened involuntarily, so he had no control over it. He had no control over it. It happened involuntarily, then the fast will still be valid. So if it's involuntarily ejaculation, which might happen just by looking at the spouse, then this fast will still be valid. This will not break the fast. But remember, even though the fast is not broken, but in both cases, the man will need to make ghusl. He will need to perform a fard bath. He will need to perform a fard ghusl. So in the cases of having a wet dream or involuntary ejaculation merely just by looking at your spouse, these things will not break the fast, but a man will need to perform the ghusl. He will need to perform the fard bath. And how should one take ghusl during Ramadan? How should one perform a fard bath in the month of Ramadan whilst he is fasting in the day? Now, first we need to remember and we need to know that there are 3 fara'id in ghusl. There are 3 obligations in ghusl, in a bath. So for a person's bath to be done Islamically, to be complete Islamically, he or she need to gargle the mouth. The entire mouth needs to be gargled thoroughly. Water needs to be put into the nostrils until it reaches the soft part of the bone. So number 1 was gargling the mouth thoroughly, putting water in the nostrils so that it reaches the soft part of the bone, so it reaches all the way up to here, and washing the entire body and making sure that not a single hair is left dry, so that every single hair on the body has to be made wet. These are the 3. He mentioned in a hadith that it is actually sunnah to gargle. So it's to do it, to gargle the mouth more and to put water more into the. As I was saying, the connection keeps on going. I hope it's okay now. So as I was saying, washing the mouth thoroughly and rinsing the nostrils thoroughly, this is a practiced sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we all should do outside the month of Ramadan. But in the month of Ramadan, this sunnah, it drops. A person should not wash his mouth excessively or even his nostrils, because there is the chance that the water might reach the throat, and if the water reaches the throat and goes down and reaches the stomach, then this will break the fast. So this sunnah, it drops, even to the extent that if a person performs ghusl in the month of Ramadan without having gargled or without having put water in his nostrils, his ghusl to keep in line with the faraid of ghusl, but do not do it excessively. Do not do excessively. You do not need to make the water reach the back of the throat, and you do not need to make the water go right to the back of the nostrils. Just do it lightly. But even if a person misses these things out in the month of Ramadan, then the ghusl will still be valid. So remember, it's very important to remember that caution should be taken when washing the mouth and rinsing the nostrils in the month of Ramadan. And in the last question in the second last question we have for today, can a person begin the fast in the state of impurity? So for example, if a man engages in marital relations before the subh sadiq, before the starting time of Fajr. So let's assume, we're looking at the timings now. Fajr begins at 3:15. Subh Sadiq begins at 3:15. So if a man partakes in marital relations at 3 o'clock, so it's happened before the Subh Sadiq. So now he's entered in the state of impurity. But before the Fajr time, before 3:15, he hasn't performed a ghusl. he hasn't performed a ghusl, and now that he's entered the fast in the state of impurity, his fast will still be valid. Okay, his fast will still be valid. Entering the fast in the state of purity is not a condition. Okay, and the niyat just needs to be there before, and niyat just needs to be made. Okay, and as long as the marital relations did not take place after the fajr, if it happened before the fajr, then it's okay. Even if he hasn't taken the ghusl before the fajr times come in, and he still hasn't taken the ghusl, the fast will still be valid. This is because he became impure before the fast started. He became impure before the fast started. If he became impure after the fast had started, then the fast will break. But this person, he became impure before the fast started, and even then he still hasn't taken a ghusl. This does not matter. The fast will still be valid. Now, keeping in line with this, and this coming to the last question, can a person delay the ghusl after the fajr salah? Okay, so now if a person is in need of ghusl and the fajr time has come in now and he still hasn't performed the ghusl, we've said in the last question that the fast will still be valid. But if a person still has not performed the ghusl and the fajr time has gone now, what happens to the fast? The fast will still be valid. This person, he will now have to perform the ghusl after the sunrise, or if he even delays it even more longer, after the dhuhr. But remember, this person will be very sinful for making the fajr qada, and even if he delays it even more longer, for making the dhuhr qada. That's why the latest this person can make the ghusl Islamically, keeping in line with the laws of Islam, is before the sunrise. This is the latest, and leaving enough time for him to pray the fajr. We must make sure that if we are ever in such a state, we perform the ghusl in due time so that we are able to perform our fajr in its correct time. If a person does not perform the ghusl at this time, his fast will still be valid, but he will be sinful for making his fajr salah qada. So as we said, the latest a person should perform the ghusl is before the sunrise, and leaving enough time for him to pray his fajr salah. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us good understanding of these masail. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.